pain or what's happening. And besides, there was such a mess around.
Yeah.
And so it was hauling everybody out and this kind of thing and that. And we put in our wounded into a landing craft that had come over and been sent over across Lake Garda to get them. And with big Red Cross landing craft, and it went off and it was hit. It was fired on by the Germans. It was hit by 88s. And we lost a number of men on that. I don't know how many. But these were of the wounded that we put on.
Yeah.
I didn't get on because I just wasn't as bad as that. I mean, the whole kneecap was showing. I mean, you're pretty racked up.
Yeah.
But I was still moving, and there were people far, far worse than this, so we put them on. Saved my life.
Yeah.
That's the way it goes. So.
And so, were you evacuated then in a later?
Right then, I was sent back for a while for recuperation for about a week. But the war was over the next day. That was it.
Okay.
In Italy,
right?
Not in Germany. And we then as I got back to my outfit, we were sent from our place in the Alps where we were sitting. The war was going on in Europe Major, whereas where we were, it was then an armistice, or it had ended. And we were sent over to the Yugoslavian, Italian-Austrian border because Tito was kicking up a fuss. And that was kind of nice because we ended up with some skiing in the Alps. And it wasn't so bad. And then we hung around until our call for Japan. And shipped back and on shipboard on the way back. And we knew we were going in for invasion. We were going to be given a week's furlough first at home, and then we were to assemble and go. And I think it was about 3 days out from New York, the announcement came of the dropping of the bomb in Hiroshima. And
what was your reaction when you heard that news?
Who knew from a bomb?
Yeah.
Just think about it. I mean, you're getting secondhand information. I mean, it's fine when you're sitting 20 years later or 40 years later, you still don't know, but you realize what happened. But at the time, it was unthinkable. And the information didn't flow through. But obviously it had served its purpose. And anything that had stopped the war, I don't think that you could have found very many soldiers who would have said we shouldn't have dropped the bomb.
Exactly.
You know.
So you arrived in New York. You were given leave. And then were you discharged shortly after?
I was given leave, went home, got married. Got married on VJ Day. The actual VJ Day when the surrender was going on board the ships in the Tokyo Bay is when we were married. And then I went back to Camp Hale. No, Camp. Where did we get discharged from? Not Hale. I think it was Swift. Yeah, we went back to Swift.
It's Texas?
And in Texas. Because Hale was then being used, I think, as a prisoner of war camp, and et cetera, which they later took the entire thing down because of the problems with Smokefield Valley. There was just no way to sustain it. Yeah. I went back to Swift, and I think it was another 3 months before we were discharged.
And what did you do then after discharge?
Well, back home, newly married and whatnot, and set up. I was living in Maplewood, and moved to a town called Verona, which is, in Jersey, and I went to work in the business my father was in
the fur business,
which had always taken for granted I would be in Hollanderizing or a Hollander. I sort of didn't like it right from the beginning. Maybe it was a comparison to what I had been through or whatnot. I stayed with them about 3 years. 3 or 4 years, and then I went into competition with them. Actually, I had learned quite a bit, and I set up my own business in fur cleaning with one of the people who had been in with me. Fortunately or unfortunately, I picked the man who was in charge of sales for Hollander Eisen. So that wasn't a bad partner to have to start a new business. But that didn't really work for me either in my home life. As many who came back from the war, we had married at 21. And that doesn't reason for it. And this was very early because divorces sort of didn't exist in 1945, 46, 1950.
Yeah.
It was very early for that kind of a thing. And I'm Jewish, I'm Sephardic Jewish. And I'll tell you, it must have been back to the first, the first temple. There wasn't a divorce all the way back. That's for sure. At any rate, we were separated at the time.
That was a big deal.
It was a big deal
within your family.
And I had 2 children by then. It was a very big deal. It wasn't a question of the family, our own family.